morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, because we're all global here, so everyone's everywhere. And I appreciate those of you who are up early or staying up late to join us on this call. It's a really interesting topic, and I haven't really seen many other people addressing this. And we are talking a lot about human-centric leadership and this sort of approach or model that we should have probably always had all along through our careers, but there's getting a lot of attention around the dialogue for a lot of reasons, which we're going to talk about today. And I think that, when we think about human-centric leadership, we how does that apply to the sales part of the organization? Oftentimes they live in different universes, right? There's the organization and then those sales guys over there. So how are we taking some of these things or talking about it at least and applying it to the sales side of the organization, and what is that going to look like? So it's kind of the frame of the conversation today. So I thank you guys so much, and especially bring this global perspective, because I think all of us in different cultures and different segments, even in different industries or different backgrounds, are talking about this in different ways. So thank you so much. Thanks. So I'm going to just go around and have everybody, the speakers, introduce themselves. We were lucky enough to get Siobhan Gallagher to join us. So Siobhan, would you mind introducing yourself and also dropping some contact information in the chat, just in case somebody wants to get in touch with you directly?
Sure.
Great.
Sure. Hi there. I am Siobhan Gallagher. I am originally Irish, as you can probably tell from the accent. And I am based in London. I work throughout EMEA and globally. I'm a fractional sales leader, managing global SaaS, primarily SaaS enterprise B2B sales teams. And yeah, delighted to be here. This is a really important topic, so look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. And we have Denise Reese with us as well. Denise, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Heather. Denise Reese, based in Atlanta, Georgia. Siobhan and I connected on this. I spent 6.5 years in just outside of London before moving to Atlanta back in 2008. But I'm also a global fractional sales leader, and also the founder of a separate company that is totally not aligned to my day job in technology professional services. But really excited to be here and be a part of the dialogue and the conversation. This is much needed for our industry.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And, you're a founder of a new organization, or I'm not sure about new, but, sales is everything, right? So sales, it touches all of our worlds. Thank you so much. And congratulations on that endeavor, by the way. We also have Sujeet on the phone with us as well, on the line with us. Sujeet, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, thanks, Heather. So I'm Sujeet Pillai. I'm the CTO here at Incentivate Solutions and Praha. We have a couple of products. I've been in incentive compensation for almost 20 years right now. I started off more on the business side, and now I do a lot more on the technology side here. But I'm still someone who's passionate about the business of incentive comp and how people set comp plans. What's the future towards it, towards this area and stuff like that. So very happy to be here.
Thank you. And I think what's important about all the people on the call, including myself, so my name is Heather Ransome. I am also a fractional sales professional. I pretty much specialize in go-to-market strategy. But I think that what's interesting about having all of this on this call, with especially with the fractional background, is what gives us, we have a little bit of an opportunity, because we're seeing a lot of organizations, right? So we don't have a single job in a single company where this is touching. We're actually able to be in this community and among other fractionals. And then Sujeet, as the founder and partner of Incentivate, and the daddy, one of the daddies of Praha, part of your reaction to this has been the development of Praha, that this human-centric leadership, and seeing so many different compensation variables through the Incentivate enterprise platform. Is that right?
Right. So when I started my career, it was more about the formula, about the algorithm, about calculating things correctly. The math the math was more important. But then over time, we come to realize that it's not just the math, right? We are managing real human beings. So what goes into the and so I come from a pretty good, strong math background. I can do way more complicated math than I end up doing in my career. But that's not the point of it, right? The point of it is putting the right metrics, the right kind of comp plans out there that can actually motivate and that can actually make the salesperson feel feel good working for you, feel heard that yeah, this is something I can hit on my these are the targets that I can hit, and this seems like fair compensation for the targets that I hit.
Yeah. So, I want to just kind of start also like, and how important do you think that is now, Siobhan, if you don't mind kind of chiming in, like when we're talking about this human-centric leadership, which again should be the culture of every organization, how important do you think it is now to be talking about this as a central part of our conversations in, all areas of the company, recruitment, human resources, and sales in general?
Oh, I think it's absolutely critical. The more engagement and engaged employees that you have, the more productive and successful your business is. And I think it's critical to survey employees, to take the pulse of your organization and find out, really understand how your employees are feeling and where the potential points of failure are. Really, it's about encouraging dialogue and getting great input from the ground up.
Denise, do you have any thoughts of that? Is why do you think it's so central now of all times? Like why in March of 2024 is it as important or more important than ever in your opinion?
Well, I think, let's not forget that we went through a global pandemic that forever changed the way that we work, we live, and the way that we think about attracting and retaining talent. And although, the powers that be, so to speak, would like us to go back to what I like to call the before times, we're never going back to that. And so I think now, folks that are in sales and really any industry, they want to be aligned to organizations and work with organizations where they're seen, heard, valued. They're truly allowed to bring their full selves to work every day. And so you have to have something that differentiates your organization from the myriad of other companies that are out there looking for good sales talent. And, to the point that was made that Sujeet made during his introduction, he said something that really made sense about, just really making sure that we continue to look at the full person and not just think about the goals and objectives. And like, yes, they're attainable. Yes, they may be difficult, but, how do we bring in everything else into the equation when we're thinking about, about sales compensation in particular? And I think the pandemic forever changed that for us. We had a whole, what did we call it? The great resignation, because people were leaving companies where they didn't feel like they were valued as a human. So I think now more than ever, this is going to continue to be front and center as we start thinking about how we attract and retain strong, good, solid sales talent going forward.
So I think that's interesting that you're talking about this, the Great Resignation and of COVID, but there's also the generational changes that I think are impacting some of this, right? So, there is like I've said, we raised our children, right, or our young professionals to have a little bit more stake in the game of everything that they do, and a little bit more ownership and understanding and aligning with their core values. And if the culture doesn't align with that, whether it be through just the general culture of the job or the sales compensation is not alignment to it, that's another thing to consider. And so I think that there's this change of dynamic from the people who are post-COVID who've been around, that's Gen Xers and baby boomers and beyond. But the Gen Zs and millennials and everybody thereafter is just coming to the table with a completely different perspective. They have things like, I don't know, self-respect and boundaries, and they want honesty, and they don't want to do things just because you told me to. They want to do things because it makes sense for them. And huzzah for us doing that with them, or helping them and setting some example. But also, as you know, as they continue to come up into leadership, right, they're going to be demanding that we rethink some of our systems, including sales comp. Siobhan, did you have some thoughts on that? Did you want to add?
Yeah, completely. Sales is a difficult game, and there's nothing worse than really, doing doing your side of the bargain, delivering on your results, smashing your targets, putting in the very hard slog to deliver, and then not being able to be rewarded as you thought you were going to be rewarded. And whilst our generation may take that sometimes as, okay, what can I do about it? Or that's just the organization. You know, the generations coming behind us, because, we're living in a time where there are so many different generations with such vastly different experiences, all in one workplace. And these young, talented people are joining the workforce and saying, no, enough, that's good enough. I want to be paid for my talents, because I don't want to be in this kind of job anyway. Or, I'm doing it for X result. If you can't deliver, then, businesses are going to face a backlash. I actually read on LinkedIn today, and I don't know if how relevant this is, but we went through, Denise, you mentioned it about the quiet quitting revolution. Well, now we've come full circle, and we're now in the loud quitting era, where millennials and Gen Z are posting on TikTok about how badly they've been treated,
Yeah.
how they've been let go. And, shame on us, shame on those employers. I actually think it's got to be applauded, because sometimes just speaking up is the only way to call attention to practices that are just way past their sell date. So we need to get with the plot and deliver on, just being a better, offering the generations coming behind us a better place to work in a
Mm.
more mental health friendly environment. So.
Yeah, can I add something to that as well? I'm sorry, Sujeet, were you going to chime in?
No, go ahead. I'll take it.
No, I was going to add to that. I'm so glad you brought that up, Siobhan, because I've been like going down a TikTok rabbit hole with some of these videos, and it's just amazing that the way people feel comfortable talking to other humans, it's just pretty disrespectful and just awful. But I think, part of that comes from, I think about some of the issues that I've encountered in my career, and I think we've just been taught to just kind of grin and bear it, and we just never talked about it. We might have talked about it with our friends and, with family members, but we didn't really talk about it inside of the four walls of the organization. And I think that has also done us a disservice, because we didn't really leave a blueprint on how you manage these things. And we all know that, when you put light on something, that causes change when you shed light on it. The other thing that I'll say is that, back to the point that you were making, Siobhan, about, folks wanting to be fairly compensated. I feel like whenever I've come across, and I've worked in organizations and been a part of companies where the sales compensation model was so convoluted, and the goalposts kept moving in the middle of the game. So you're working towards one goal, and then when you meet or you're exceeding that goal, then suddenly it's, oh, well, actually, what we really meant here is, this, you were being incentivized on your booking, not on your total contract value, or, whatever scenario they want to create. And what I've found in doing that is that it just becomes a mechanism for organizations to not have to pay out these commissions, right? They want they want the success, but they don't necessarily want to incentivize people appropriately for achieving or overachieving on that success.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I've seen a lot of. I mean, it's not general. Lots of people in this business really know how to make good comp plans as well. Simple ones that are focused on hitting having salespeople hit their targets. But I've even seen the dark side of this, where you find plans that are even if they're not shifting goalposts at the last moment, but the plans are designed not to pay out, right? And
That's
you would
right.
hit 4 of your main goals, but you would not make pay because of one unrelated, behavioral aspect that just this thing. That's just, and it's all additive, right? It's not like, oh, if you hit 4 goals, you still get 80% of your target pay. It's no, you have to do every single thing before you get any money. And
That's
like
right.
we were discussing COVID just before this, I think it's not just a generational shift. I think COVID put us all into an sort of brought up existential questions in our head. I mean, at least for me, I thought I was that close to this thing, even though I'd never got COVID, touch wood. But I really, at some points during COVID, I really thought in my head, will I see next year? Because that's how bad it was, right? And that's when that's when you really start thinking about what's important in your life, and you realize that your career, your job, your commissions is a big part of it. You want to put a lot of stuff into it, but it's not everything, right? So I think that's what made a whole generation of people who went through that a lot more bold and want to speak out a lot more, and to uh, stand up to this kind of behavior that we see sometimes now.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
the trust, right? So trust is a big thing right now. And I think that is a greater perspective of COVID, because a lot of people making decisions for us and telling us what to do. And we really weren't clear about what that meant or how it's going to affect us. And if you tie that into like sales compensation, I know it sounds like a weird kind of tie. I think that's another thing that I've at least seen, and I'd like for you guys to share of like what's not working and why isn't it not working. And I think that part of the sales comp plan is, even if you aren't trying to be nefarious, to your point about making it unachievable, right? And just gaslighting a sales rep along, right? I've got plenty of commission checks I never got myself because I feel I was gaslit. What it's not necessarily nefarious. Sometimes it's because something's not working in your organization, so you change the comp plan. And I like to say that this is very much a very short-sighted thing. Let's change the comp plan, but you can't change it across the board because there's different comp plans with different tenured reps, with different salary plus kind of situations. And then you're adding another layer. I kind of think about it in terms of like writing bad code on top of bad code, right? So why are we just, putting another sales compensation plan in to address the issue? Or activity-based, which is a whole nother kind of mushrooming problem right now, is activity-based compensation, because you're not hitting X marks, which that to me is a mess, like waiting to happen. I've seen that in my life, but if what have you have all seen in that regard? Like, do we just all just decide sales comp, changing the comp plan is going to make everything better?
Well, I don't know if we decide that it's going to make it better, but it certainly makes people a little happier, right? Like, you're not in sales because you just want to make a base salary. You're in sales to close the large deals, to go on that vacation, do that renovation, buy the boat, the bag, the whatever it might be, right? So there's some other rationales as to why we get into sales. But I will say this, I just with a client just have gone through revamping and building out their commission plan, their commission program, and the feedback that I've gotten from the team by and large has been really positive, because I've actually sat in their seat. And I think that's part of the issue too, is that we have a lot of people that are responsible for creating sales compensation models who haven't actually carried a bag. They haven't been in front of clients. They're an operations person that's, just counting. They're just, thinking about the metrics and not necessarily like how achievable is this? How fair is it for me as a seller to have to wait months, in a professional services example, having to wait months until we invoice a client before I actually see the fruits of my labor? And, so I put in some mechanisms that allow the team to get something at signature, and as well as something as we're invoicing. So they feel like, oh, wow, I'm being recognized for what I've closed. And I think the fact that I've sat in their seat, am sitting in their seat, have a number that I'm carrying for the team as well as a personal number, it just makes so much of a difference when you're thinking about what's going to work and what won't work when you're creating a compensation plan.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd agree 100%.
Yeah. So one of the people I worked with a lot, like one of my clients, I worked with them for a long time, and like I keep saying he taught me a lot of sales comp that I couldn't learn from anywhere else. He used to say, not everything in sales is supposed to be solved by the comp line, right? A lot of that goes to sales coaching. A lot of that goes to just training and that kind of thing. You can't make a perfect solution that solves absolutely everything, right? So that's also the problem. Sometimes people try to solve everything by adding more and more components in the comp plan. That's where it becomes complicated.
Yes. And I would add to that as well, Sujeet, like, making sure that you have the right people in the right seat, and that
Yeah,
people
exactly.
actually want to be in that sales seat. Because there's
Right, yeah.
oftentimes folks that have ended up in sales because they're an amazing sales engineer, as an example.
Right.
And, so they have a brilliant technical mind and can distill the technology into layperson's terms, but
Right.
they're not necessarily a true seller. So
Right.
I think that comes into play also.
Yeah, exactly. There are lots of people who go into sales comp administration and sales comp design who don't want to be there because they were the only person left over. They got that role as well. Right. Yeah.
That's right.
That causes. Yeah.
So how do we, the title of this webinar, how do we modernize our compensation plans? Like, and I know there's a lot of situations out there, right? If you're in organization now that finds yourself completely tied to a million different kinds of comp plans, that just gives some sales compensation administrator absolute like job security because they're the only person that can figure it out, right? Versus like a startup, right? That's saying, okay, I got to start here. Like, what would you say are some of the kind of tips and tricks? Let's start with, I think the startup one's easy, but let's say you're in the middle of an organization with all these crazy comp plans. How do you even start to say, I want to go to a human-centric model? What does that look like? And then how do you handle a change management? Like, how does that roll out? I mean, I'm really asking, like, if I had to do this tomorrow, it might be a little difficult. Like, it's going to be a long road. Anybody have any feelings about that?
Well, you can hire me or Siobhan to start to help you with that. So there's that.
For sure. Yeah, happy to take up the mantle. I mean, I think for me, you need to review whatever the framework is that you have and work out, is that actually feasible? Is it logical that someone could achieve those numbers within your sales cycle, within your actual budgetary year, because some of those numbers may be achievable, but it might take a year and a half or 2 years in this current climate. Though I would hate to be in an organization that has a 2 year a 2 year sales cycle. I mean, the very first thing I would do is bring that sales cycle down, or look how we can batch up parts of that sales process. Um, so make it transparent, make it realistic, and kind of along the lines of SMART goals, measurable in real time, with targets that are transparent. I just to give you an example that I don't think I will ever forget, but I worked for a large global organization, headquartered in the US. I was based in the UK cost center, and I delivered on a deal that no one thought would get in that budgetary year. I was really happy about it. I was due a six-figure payout on the deal, and because the comp plan was linked to currency rates, the deal delivered in sterling, and by the time it had been calculated in dollars and then converted back to sterling, I just I fell below the benchmark to hit my kickers. And honestly, and the worst part of this was that it was so complicated. My sales manager couldn't explain that to me at the time. So make it easy to understand.
Yeah.
Is my, easy to understand, easy to execute within the defined budgetary year would be the three very simple criteria I would use. I'm sure you've
And
got other points to this.
yeah, no, just to add to that, I actually fell into that once as well, and it did not feel good. And I'm like, well, when was somebody going to tell me that I needed to be thinking about dollars versus local currency? Because I'm selling in local currency, so that's how I should be incentivized. But there we have that. I think that the other aspect here, Heather, is, you know, don't try to do it all at once, right? So if you already have a plan or process in place and you're trying to move to this more human-centric compensation model, don't don't introduce too much change at one time. Like figure out maybe what are those one or two things that could really be value adding and could be perceived as being more human centric, as opposed to saying, okay, we're going to revamp the entire sales compensation model. And then also, I would say, make sure that what you're incentivizing is actually aligned to the overarching company goals and objectives as well. Because if sales is only incentivized just to bring in more business, but if that business is not profitable, if it's not aligned to the overall strategy, either in terms of industry vertical or location or even capability, right? If those things aren't aligned, then it's kind of pointless. And then also look for things that can be maybe short-term triggers that can get some quick wins in for folks to feel like, oh, okay, this is something that I can do really quickly to add to my my earning potential, like creating spiffs, right? Like if you have a specific offering and you want to get more of those offerings in your portfolio, well, incentivize folks, increase their commission, or give an additional cherry on top, so to speak, for those types of deals. So just being, I think, just really thoughtful about it, but also not feeling like you got to introduce too much change at one time.
Yeah, from my perspective, mainly it needs to be simple. Simplicity is the most important part of this, right? That you don't want a rep to try and find out and figure out an algorithm. Related to that, it's also communication. You can't just make a plan and roll it out. You have to sort of sell it to the rep as well. Why did we put these metrics? Why are we hitting this? How is that related to the comp? How is that related to the company goals? How is that related to where you're going? And fairness fairness has to be considered a lot, especially in smaller organizations. There might be a sales power dynamic. Some of the older salespeople, sales directors may be more powerful. I've seen too many organizations in which some of those more powerful directors walk away with lower goals because they have more power in the game that way. The other dynamic is not really related to the sales comp itself, but how you communicate performance to your sales reps. For example, I was discussing with a client some time ago that they have an annual comp plan, but their reps don't get to see frequent enough updates as to where they are and whether or not they're trending to hit their sales comp policy. And at the end of the year, very few people hit targets, and very few people get paid, right? So, and the company doesn't want this as well. They don't want a large number of their salespeople, upset that they made no sales comp over the whole year after putting in so much work. But it's too late at that point to go to Denise's point. You can add in new spiffs, or you can add in this thing. So if you're able to communicate faster to your reps, they will also know that whether or not they're going to hit their comp goals and their targets. But even the company will get an early warning. It doesn't seem like anyone's going to get paid. Let's introduce some extra spiffs or contests that can actually give some money out. And because it's not like the company did bad either, right? They had some moderate level of performance. So whatever they found good in this thing, they can introduce a spiff to just get those reps who did better in those metrics paid at least. So while the comp plan may seem like it's really a formula, but it's also how it's administered. It's also how often you're able to communicate, how often you're able, and how you're able to present intermediate results that matter this way.
So I have a couple things to add here. I think, first of all, the way I coach, the way I've always developed my sales teams was I find out what motivates them. I have an interview with them. And when we're talking about human-centric leadership, that's kind of always been my approach, because I have felt, and I studied all leadership and management, and every course that you can imagine, and I found that there is no one way to manage an organization. You have to manage each individual, but you have to understand what motivates each individual. And so sometimes, like, polling them and really understanding who your sales team is and what they want, because right now they might just be kind of towing the line because that's all they have. They don't have any kind of buy-in, is what they do, because they don't think there's an option. But if I were going to start today, if somebody hired me today to come and do this, I would say, let's interview one-on-one. Let me interview everybody in your team. I want to know what their current relationship to their comp plan is. Do they understand it? I can't tell you how many times my sales teams did not know how they got paid. And I'm like, how do I manage them? How do I coach them if they don't know? Because that means that they're just throwing activity against the wall and seeing what sticks, and they're not being strategic because it's not, their activity is not in alignment with the actual ROI. So in my life, I would always just have them write their own personal business plan. So start with their personal business plan. Be like, what do you want to achieve? Move back, kind of the SMART goals, right? Now let's break that down into quarter. Let's tie those to the company goals. Is this achievable? How are we going to do it? And then get into the detail. But I think even if you can't give them everything they want, you start there, because I'm a firm believer of coaching people into their next job if that's the case too. It just might not be the organization for them. I'm not going to make you stay in this organization if it's not the way you want to do business, but you should know how to do business. It's entrepreneurial in spirit. And I think that's why I'm attracted to sales, is because I feel like through sales, you become a self-actualized person. And, Denise can say, because she's an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Sales is in everything that we do, and it teaches you how to run a business inside a business. So to me, I think that would be a great way to start if I were going to change it today. And then also that would create the relationship going forward that I could continue to coach to, as long as the comp plan was transparent and actually not just transparent, that we were getting our numbers back in time. That was another thing for me that has been really, really painful, is I'm coaching someone to numbers that are 4 weeks late. So I just lost 4 weeks of time to coach them into their compensation. So that's another thing when we talk about just creating these really complex or multiple layers of conflict. This one's coming at a salary, this one's coming in commission only, this is a 1099. I'm like, how am I going to coach to all those people when they're different conversations, different comp plans, and then make sure that the administrator has figured out how to get me the numbers, because that's hard for them, right? Again, we go back to like, RevOps, job security. I gotta use 7 different softwares, and then I gotta call the so and so, and that's a whole mess too. And I think that as sales leaders, we all understand that pain. But when the human-centric conversation is happening right now, and it is happening because we don't have a choice. There is no choice. That is our workforce today, definitely in America. You're feeling that in the UK as well, Siobhan? Yeah. And Suji, are you feeling it with yours? Yeah. We don't have a choice. This is not like it would be nice to have. This is a must have. And so when we think about that, we can't be left out of the conversation as the sales side. And oftentimes we are. And then we as leaders are reacting to that. So I would say if there's one takeaway that hopefully somebody sees this on a recorded version, bring sales in now, because most C-suiters sadly don't understand how we do our business. We're magic. But guess what? They need us. Without sales, they don't have a company. But they should be bringing us into the conversation in the beginning, not at the end, and saying, here, go do this, because theoretically, this is how it should work. Because guess what? That's the same conversation I'm having in 3 months from now. I'll be like, change the comp plan, it's not working. And now I'm like, but I don't want to put another comp plan on there, because that makes my job harder. Do you guys agree with that or disagree? Feel free to chime in.
Here. I couldn't have said it better, Heather. And I think it's been interesting these last I would say maybe over the last 5 years of seeing more sales folks in the C-suite, either as a chief revenue officer, a chief growth officer, chief development officer, having someone that really is at the table strategically inside of an organization. It makes such a difference. And even if you're a smaller company, if your VP of sales or whatever their title is a part of your leadership team, and is helping to create that alignment, that just makes it better for everyone, because then sales is not treated as an afterthought. They're actually like a strategic imperative to growth inside of the organization as well.
Yeah, and actually we are seeing this already in some of like our client requests now. I read a recent, I think it was an HBR article as well, that sales organizations are beginning to give sales reps like a buffet of options. Pick your goals and pick your compensation metrics that you'd like to hit. And so they give them like a set of 6, and you got to pick 3 of them and then hit those goals. Right, so they're giving a lot more autonomy to sales reps so that they can pick their own goals and hit that. We actually also did a small project for one of our clients that way, and there is the HBR article actually said there was evidence that the sales organization that begin to do this have a lot better sales productivity from their sales reps who pick their own metrics, pick their own goals. So I think at some level, that kind of granting autonomy to the sales reps and their managers is already happening. And to be honest, before I came into the smaller end of the sales spectrum, when I started my career, I worked with all large companies, people with 5,000 reps in the sales force, 15,000 reps. I didn't realize how much work the sales managers do in smaller sales forces, because there's no armies of support. There's no armies of support roles who support the sales force. So a lot of the pressure comes onto the sales manager. They're the ones who are handling disputes. They're the ones who are explaining the comp plan. They're the ones who are doing all this. So I think that might be another theme that's coming in there. I think soon we'll have to put a lot, because in general, Salesforce sizes have come down as well. We'll have to put a lot more focus on how we can serve sales frontline managers a lot more, rather than, just, hand them a comp plan and you're done. We'll have to give them a lot more tools and a lot more support that way.
Here, and I feel like, again, back to the administration lifts, even in environments where I had a good sales rev ops department, and if they were getting me stuff on time, I still felt that I had to coach and do a lot of administration in order to prepare myself for the meetings I was having with my reps too. So I that's fine, but I like coaching deals, man. Like I like talking about the deal.
Yes.
Like then I hate all that administrative stuff, because to me that is where the real learning comes. That's where I'm really teaching them how to fish, and teach about negotiation tactics, and how to organize their day and like really get the deal done. Like I geek out on that. And sitting there crunching numbers on Excel spreadsheet from reports that you already gave me that you think are finished, but they don't make sense to me, is not a good use of my time. Now, in the fractional world, which is interesting, is when you're managing, maybe you guys can also chime in on this. Fractional work is not going anywhere, guys, right? This is the new normal. And I think it's better for business, because again, like Denise is going from this client and then going to another client and really trying things on and seeing what works, and really becoming more efficient and a specialist, like true specialist, because we're not just in a job doing it for X amount of years and then taking that and then having to learn, or and like having 20 meetings at work and then going to do our professional development. Professional development is baked into our work because we're learning all different kinds of products, systems, and everything, and it's really fun. And because of that, because fractional sales management is now going to be a thing, or just gig worker, professional gig worker in general, we're now managing several sales teams at once, right? We might have 5 sales teams at once. I don't have time to sit and like go through all of those different components. Like I need this stuff like now so I can coach to the deal or coach to the comp plan. So that's kind of why I got interested in Praha. I was like, I really want to come and not just work with this product, but represent the product, because I think that's going to really be empowering fractionals, or anybody. So I do have, Reese has something to add here. And before I go over to Reese, I do want to say, everybody's a salesperson in 2024 and beyond, right? Everybody's a salesperson. I spend more time on my 225 social media channels, like I'm running Tamagotchi craziness, right? Like I'm just, we are all marketing and selling all the time, right? We're all going to have revenue streams that are coming in from multiple sources. How do we track that, and how do we know and trust and that it's accurate? There's a lot of these like influencer models. Denise has a luxury fragrance business. There's sales, and like sales is everywhere, right? So I think it's our time. Like finally, we are like, people are going to get it because they're doing it themselves in their own, house. Like I got to sell the fact that I know how to make waffles on Facebook this week, right? So it's interesting. I think we're finally going to get our time in the sun. That being said, does sales compensation, is it going to go away? Like, why do people respond to a sales compensation model instead of just a salary? Is it so they can buy luxury fragrances that they might not be able to bake in their salary? Or, so Reese Chimes has something to say about a company that went with no sales compensation model. So if you don't mind, I wasn't having guest speakers here, but I'm very interested to hear what they say.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm putting your mic on there, Reese, and your cat. So chime in.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yep,
hi.
you can.
Yeah.
Reese.
Welcome to the party.
Nice to meet you all. So this topic is quite near and dear to me. I met a gentleman who was head of sales for a janitorial distributor company. And over time, their incentive plan was creating problems in that, people were competing against each other. They weren't listening to the client. All they were doing was focused on the incentive plan and what they were earning. And the CEO and the head of sales, this guy that I met, said, okay, we're done with this. And they got rid of the incentive plan. And it took them about 3 years to go through the transition to finally get there. They raised everybody's base salary to something very, very high that was competitive total comp in the market, competitive OTE. And they did lose some people, but they were able to, they're convinced this is the way to go, because now these employees are focused on the client and not on what they're earning. And the other benefit that they got out of it was they were attracting a certain type of individual now that was different than what they had been attracting in the past, and that's exactly what they wanted. And some people left, and actually some of the people came back because they went to other companies. They found out it wasn't so good, and they said, you know what, maybe I'll just try this. And they came back and they've been very successful. So I just wanted to share that. And since then, and I did a presentation at World at Work about this 2 years ago. We had a discussion and a kind of like a a debate for the audience, and it was very interesting to get different perspectives about it. I'm not advocating it necessarily, but it's just something I think we should think about.
So if I can add to that, do you go by Reese or Buck? Do you go by Buck?
No, Reese. Yeah, Buck is
Reese.
my company name, Denise.
Oh, right.
It's
Got
Reese.
you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No worries. Well, it's easy for me to remember because of my last name. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
So I appreciate your perspective there, Reese. And it's interesting. I've worked for a couple of companies that have made that switch of not having incentive plans. So you just got paid you were well paid on your base. It was bittersweet for me because number one, if you're a good seller, then you're going to be obsessed by your customer and you're going to want to do what's right for your client. And that's going to create just a level of growth just on its own.
Right.
And then what I realized is that, and I think it's a little bit different if you're selling a product versus in my world for the past 15 or so years, I've been laser focused on professional services.
Yeah.
And so when you're bringing in a large professional services deal, and first of all, the time and effort that it takes to do that, but then the follow-on opportunities that it creates for the company, it's like, wait a minute, I'm literally bringing in an additional, millions of dollars to the company, and I'm not actually being incentivized for that. Even if there was like a bonus or something that made me feel like, you all appreciate the value that I'm bringing. So I think it's a very different model, and I think it's a model that can work, but I think it's probably better suited for product versus services, because product sales tend to be a little bit more transactional. And if you're trying to create stickiness and longevity, I can imagine that you want people that are aligned to that and want to build long-term sustainable relationships and partnerships with clients versus, selling them a thing and then moving on to the next. So that's my thought there.
Well, I should qualify. They got rid of sales incentives, but they did allow the employees to be eligible for the annual company bonus. Okay.
Yeah.
It just wasn't at the same rate as what the incentives were. So there was still a bonus opportunity there. The other thing it did is it required their leadership, their sales leadership, to get much better competency in performance management, because they had to manage, they were using the incentive plan basically to manage performance, which wasn't the best thing that they should have been doing anyway. But when they eliminated the incentives, they had to go through a massive training program of, frontline sales leaders to get them used to doing performance management and coaching. They got much better at coaching. They got much better at all of those things that affect the sales effort other than the incentive plan. They just, they got much better competency in that area.
So I've never worked in sales directly myself, but I gotta ask you guys, if you were a rock star salesperson in that industry, would you join such a company that doesn't give incentives?
No.
Probably not.
Because I love the deal. Like, to me, I like the art of the deal. And also, I think it really comes down to Reese, I'm going to take you back off camera if you know. Thank you so much for bringing this up.
Sure.
And let's talk again. I feel like I love the art of the deal, and I think it also has to do with back to the goals of the company, right? Aggressive growth takes aggressive incentive plans, period.
Right.
And it depends on your competition. So if you are doing a product and you don't have people like chasing you down the street, you need what we call the hunter's mentality and and you have to keep growing the incentive plans. That would be my perspective on it, and I think that there is room for all the things. But if you're trying to go for aggressive growth, and if you have investors, so if you have investors that are like, what are you doing for me today? How are you achieving these numbers? We're going to go public, or there's some sort of exit strategy. I think that really informs whether or not a sales compensation incentive model would be best for you. Do you guys disagree?
No, I don't disagree. And I think it goes back to what I was saying as well, Heather. Like if you're a product focused company versus a services company, I think you have to really kind of make that determination as to what's going to be most beneficial. But most sellers, we like, to your point, we want to get into the weeds on the deal construct, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we create really cool incentive models for the client to do more business with us? How do we create longevity by doing like a multi-year agreement with a client versus just selling them something for a finite amount of time? And that's just something that, you know, if you've not been doing this for a while, I don't know that you geek out on it the same way that we do.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I
Yeah.
don't know that I would sign up for that, because I've been there and I was actually really upset when I started to look at what I would have made if I was getting a cut of what I sold
So
versus just getting a standard bonus.
exactly,
I think
that's
the new
the so
generations are
sorry.
going to feel that way too, because the new generations are definitely more like, I want to be, I call it lazy efficiency. I consider myself very lazy, which makes me efficient, meaning that I want to do 5 hours worth of work, but get paid as if I'm doing 40. And I think that mentality is going to be in these younger generations because they don't want to spend a time work, which means incentive-based work is going to reside with them. Not to mention that gamification is how these young generations grew up. They are gamers, right? So gamification of a job appeals to them because they're like this all the time, right? I mean, I started with Pong. That's how far back I go. But I think that gamification in general is just part of our world now. You can't even I can't even just go to the gym. I have to get an app and I got to do the 28-day challenge and everything. So I think that's being built into our universe. But Sujeet, did you want to also mention your feelings on that? Sujeet?
Hello. Oh,
Did you have feelings about that? I'm sorry.
No, I was just mentioning what Denise said, that even product companies, right? If I was at a product company and I was a rockstar seller and I sold 25 widgets and you sold 16 and we're getting paid the same, eventually I'd feel cheated.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there has to be the difference. We feel that even in regular like salaries, right? If you're giving a raise and you're giving the same raise to two people and one person does way better than the other, that guy's gonna feel that woman's gonna feel this thing. So it might work in the short term, I think, but at least in high performance places like sales, this thing will always be a problem. So I don't think incentives are going anywhere that way.
Yeah.
Siobhan, I know that you have been, I'm pivoting real quick because I really know that Siobhan has been nerding out. I've been watching her talking on all these different panel discussions about AI. So, you know, when we're talking about use of AI in our sales world, or just in general, like it doesn't have to be in sales, how do you see that impacting how we do our jobs as sales leaders?
Oh, I think we're living in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, the world of work as we know it, where we grew up with a very traditional SaaS model, or well, it was software before it was SaaS. Everything is changing. I mean, I've worked in tech for about 20 years now, and I read a post today on LinkedIn that said the golden era of SaaS is over. And how it's changing in the world of sales is that buyers are more enabled. We're moving to an era of buyer centricity where they're calling the shots, they're making all the decisions. In some cases, they don't really need sellers. They're looking to just automate the whole process. So we as leaders need to realize that and adapt. And for me, I'm not frightened about, oh, will my role disappear or that of my team? I think we still need that human element. But as humans, we need to define what it is that is unique about us that we bring to the sales process and how we
Mhm.
can be added into the um, AI generated processes that are just going to make things smoother and take away, hopefully, the admin. But I mean, honestly, don't. I could I could be wrong. Don't prove me. Don't hold me to this. But I'd like to think that there's always going to be a role for people that can converse and have a human interaction. You know, post pandemic, what we are all craving is engagement and human contact. So
Mhm.
yeah, we will still have that, but the processes are changing, at a rate
Yeah.
of knots.
Yeah, I would echo what everything that you said, Siobhan. I think especially when you get into these more complex deal constructs and opportunities, particularly in large software deals that may have a professional services component to it, or just pure professional services deals. I see AI as it is already an enabler for me. It makes me more efficient when I need to respond to RFPs very quickly, or if I need to send a specific message to a client, AI helps me to frame it in a way that if I can do in like 5 minutes what would have probably taken me 30 minutes to an hour to sit there and overthink about, well, how do I say this? How do I say that? And then the other thing also is, using AI for things like, being able to really like dig into a client's balance sheet or their P&L statements to figure out like where's the opportunity, and how can I sell something new and innovative to this client. So I think for those of us that are in sales, the folks that are embracing AI and see it as an enabler to or an addition to their team are the ones that are going to be successful versus folks who just don't want to hear about it, think it's scary. It's like if you've been carrying around a mobile phone for any length of time, you're using AI and you probably don't even realize it. When you
Yeah, yeah,
interact with a chat bot on a website, you're using AI, right? So I think we're just we got to get over it. It's here and it's not going anywhere, but it can be an enabler if used appropriately.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like
Okay.
it's interesting because it's like there is this push to go to a human-centric model, yet we're using AI for a lot of things, right? And so that's an interesting contrast. We could have a whole webinar just on that. Like, how do we do both, right? And I can just say from my personal experience as CEO of a startup, my buying experience has been an absolute nightmare,
Yeah.
an absolute nightmare. And it's not because I think these systems are being put in place, the AI has been put in place, but I am a relationship buyer.
That's
Relationship selling has to exist
that's right.
because you're getting too much noise. So I think we've had this conversation before about any platform I can to tell everybody that I can tell to go and audit their automated processes right now and before it's a runaway train.
Hmm.
I want to. So, I'm having this experience where I'm being sold to, and I'm not saying sold, I'm being pitched to by automation all the time with an
Yeah.
avatar by somebody that I don't know. But
Mm.
when I go and interact with that, whatever, I don't know who's on the other end of it, right? I'm not getting the relationship. I don't feel taken care of. I'm about to spend a lot of money. This is
Mm.
not a joke. I
Yeah,
can't feel comfortable. And to me, my experience in the sales process, all of us as sales pros know this. And C-suiters, if you're listening to us, the relationship with the company is about the relationship with the salesperson. If
Yes,
I'm having a terrible buying experience or shopping experience, that to me is an indicator. That's how my experience is going to go with the company.
that's
So
right.
that's no with me. And so I think the human-centric led model, right, really has got to get into sales, because we are going to be differentiating ourselves and clearing out all this noise, as everybody and their mother wants to send me automated emails all the time. And now I'm just like, everything goes in the spam box. And then when I want to shop, I'll shop in my own inbox first.
Yeah.
That's the closest you're going to get to having starting a relationship with me.
Yeah.
So, so I think relationship selling is the other thing that is going to pendulum back. And that means that our human-centric leadership model is going to be important, using AI tools to handle the administrative component, or to help us, like Praha has an IntelliCoach, which is an AI coach the coach tool, where now I don't have to worry about that, because it's telling me what I should be having conversations with, with Reese, about his, oh, that's right, Reese, you're not on incentive based, you're just getting salary. Never mind. But I think it's an interesting time. I just sent an article to Sujeet the other day. Singapore is introducing a new over 40 program for people to go back and get new degrees in case their jobs become irrelevant with AI.
Yeah.
It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yes.
But I don't think sales is going anywhere, because look, in the middle of the deal, you don't know stuff like, well, I know that the relationship with him and his wife, he's not really a decision maker. She is. She's a decision maker, but she doesn't like him. So I got to make sure she comes in and sees the product, because there's no way AI is ever going to know what we know about people. And at the end of the day,
and being able to read the room also, right? Yeah, reading the room, and looking at those buying signals and clues of when you need to pivot the conversation because something is going awry, right? Like it's definitely not going to overtake us the way that some folks some folks think, and at least not in our lifetime, I don't think.
Without being creepy as well, right? Some of that AI selling is creepy right now, because you just sent a message to your friend about something and immediately you're seeing an ad or an email hit your inbox. That's creepy to me. They're not even subtle about it anymore. They used to be subtle about it at one point.
Yes.
We're on TikTok, so we understand creepy. If I even think something, TikTok sends me a video about it. So we're running over time. But first of all, I just want to say thank you so much. I could talk to you guys.
This was so great.
Yeah.
Thank you. This was such a great
discussion. Conversation is about how do we keep the human in sales, right? But thank you so much, and you guys dropped your information in the chat. We are going to do a key takeaways from this, and we're going to send out some follow-ups for those who registered but could not attend live. Feel free to send some emails to these folks and bring them in as a coach fractional for your organization, because clearly they know what they're talking about. And feel free to schedule a demo with Sujeet for Incentive and Praha. But thank you so much, Siobhan. Thank you so much, Denise. Thank you, Sujeet. And
thanks, it was great. Thanks, guys.
Thank
you.
All right.
Thanks so much. Take care, everybody.
Have a great day.
Yeah.